What's going on? My name is Kooky Swag. Double the E, double the G, double the awesome. Today, in honor of Halloween, I shall be reading The Russian Sleep Experiment. This shall be split into two parts due to the sensitive nature of the content that shall be in the second video. Enjoy. The remaining members of the original study, the researchers, who fled the grasp of the NKVD, the predecessor of the KGB, in the 1940s and 50s, have acutely documented the following events. The accuracy can be argued, but the depiction I will be reading is based off of the journal entries and stowaways from the original experiment. The leaked sources remain anonymous. The original study was of Nikolaev gas. The original purpose of this gas was deemed to have soldiers stay awake on a battlefield for extended periods of time throughout war. This would allow the government to either use fewer soldiers or allow for that number of soldiers to become a greater force. The gas was found to be named after Felix Nikolaev, an esteemed soldier with limited descriptions rendered from the remaining journal entries of the experiment. Today, there is evidence found that more refined versions of the Nikolaev gas are used currently as the hypnotic catalyst and as a truth serum. The following is what's considered the original predecessor of Nikolaev, also known as the Russian sleep experiment. Soviet researchers from the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-structured stimulant. This was in turn called the Russian sleep experiment. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully observe their oxygen intake, so the Nikolaev gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in large quantities and concentrations. This was before the existence of closed-circuit cameras. Therefore, they had only microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows into the holding chamber to monitor and keep track of them. The holding chamber was stocked with various books, cots to sleep on, but no bedding, running water and a toilet, and adequate dried food to last all 5 upwards of a month. These test subjects were political prisoners deemed as enemies of the Soviet state during the Second World War. During the first 5 days, everything was running smoothly with the sleep experiment. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised falsely that they would be freed if they submitted to the test, and did not sleep for the duration of the experiment. Their interactions and routines were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to discuss increasingly traumatic incidents they've experienced in their past, and the overall tone in their conversations took on a darker aspect following the 4-day mark. After 5 days, they started to protest concerning their circumstances and events contributing to where they were being held, and all commenced to show signs of intense paranoia. They ceased conversing with one another and began instead to whisper to the microphones and their one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, all of them appeared to think they could win the trust of the experimenters by ratting out the other subjects in captivity with them. At first, the researchers suspected that this was indeed a result of the experimental gas itself. The 9th day, the first of them started off screaming. He ran along the chamber, consistently screaming at the top of his lungs for 3 hours without pause. He continued attempting to scream, but after a time was only capable of producing infrequent squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. Probably the most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or rather, didn't react to it. They carried on whispering to the microphones up until the second of the captives started to scream. The three non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes. The screaming promptly ceased. So did the whispering to the microphones. The porthole windows had become unviewable. The 12th day. The researchers checked the microphones hourly to make certain they were working, since they thought it was not possible that no sound could be coming with 5 people on the inside. The oxygen intake in the holding chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it had been the volume of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy amount of strenuous exercise. On the early morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said to the prisoners that they would not do. In order to obtain some kind of reaction from the captives, they used the intercom inside the chamber, aiming to trigger any kind of reply from the captives that they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. They declared, "We are opening up the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the ground, or else you will be shot. Consent will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard but a single phrase in a very quiet voice respond, "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke out among the research workers and the military forces funding the study. Not able to provoke any more replies via intercom, the researchers had finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. 15th day, midnight. The chamber was purged of the Nikolaev gas and filled with fresh air, and instantly voices from the microphones had begun to object. 3 different voices began pleading, as though they were begging for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened, and Soviet soldiers were sent in to retrieve the test subjects. The subjects started screaming louder than ever before, and so did the soldiers when they had the chance to see what was on the inside. If you enjoyed this video, click that like button. If you want to see more of me, click that subscribe button. If you want to know the rest of the story, go on to part 2. That's all for this one. See you in the next one. I hope you have a very happy Halloween.